Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Hilaal Live. I'm Luqman Shadrack from the Cape Town studios, and now we have a very important and very special announcement to make about a seminar that's happening this Thursday right here in Cape Town at the Islamia Auditorium. And the organization OCAF and the Imam Haron Foundation invite you to be part of this journey and this very important seminar. The thoughts about Imam Abdullah Haron and the reflections from the pages of the Muslim News and Muslim Views, which is local media that's based here in Cape Town as well. To chat to us a bit more about this wonderful event, and we've got Professor Haron in studio as well. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah so much for coming through and being part of today's event, well, the event that's coming up on Thursday as well. We want to talk to our community about that. Before we get to the event and the seminar itself, maybe chat to our audience about the man, the myth, the legend, the wonderful Imam that we all have grown to know about, for those that haven't met him personally, Imam Haron, and the wonderful work that the foundation is doing to keep his memory alive as well. He was just an awesome individual that was there for the community.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity, and perhaps I should just add to that, very ordinary individual too. You know, of course, his awesomeness we basically try to celebrate annually for several reasons, and that again, because of time, we can just summarize a few aspects of his life that made him somewhat awesome in the post-death period. The Imam, of course, was born in Claremont, where he grew up, and that is also the place where he later became Imam, the Al Jamia Stegman Road area. And this was in 1955, so he fast-tracking. But prior to that, he was, in a sense, he grew up in Claremont, where he also attended the Talfala school that has since shifted to Sherwood Park. And subsequent to that period, he had been sent by his father and aunt, Maryam, to go to Mecca, where he studied under Sheikh Abdurrahman Alawi, Malik Alawi, and but because of World War II, he had to leave, and it was that basis or that grounding that stimulated him to further his studies when he returned. And he was then taught by two outstanding shuyukh at the time. The one was Sheikh Taha Khamildin, who was a great-grandfather of Sheikh Faiq Khamildin, who we all know. And then there was Sheikh Ismail Hanif Edwards, who is one of the well-known Azhari graduates at the time, who had written quite a number of texts in Arabic Afrikaans. So this grounding basically had influenced him also to really think along theological lines, along political lines, because they were open-minded in terms of their teaching, and he adopted that particular open approach. And when he became Imam in 1955, some of the elders were not too happy, but there were others who basically spurred him on to really seriously consider that. So with his educational background, he was able to serve that capacity. But what he did in addition to that was he then went on to establish the Claremont Muslim Youth Association. And that association in itself was a very lively organization, in the sense that it encouraged youth to have debates, to talk about the socio-political, economic circumstances we were. And some of them were influenced by the unity movement at the time. They were also influenced by the TRSA, Teachers League of South Africa. So all those ideological streams sort of flowed into the Muslim community, but the Imam helped to shape it more along Islamic lines. In other words, they interacted with secular ideas, and in that way, the youth that he basically was leading were able to redirect themselves to thinking about the circumstances were from purely Muslim perspective, and that is the way he made a difference.
Alhamdulillah. In Cape Town, you know, he's staying in Cape Town. He's done so many wonderful projects. Imam was also a very avid follower of sport and supporter
Indeed,
of sport as well in our communities.
Correct.
Maybe give us a little bit about that side of Imam.
Yeah, in terms of course, as we know, the Cape community was very much alive, so to speak, to certain sporting codes. We know cricket as one of them, and he played cricket. We also know rugby, and he also used to play rugby in his young days. And then, of course, alongside these, we must also remember that many of these clubs, like Primroses, like Violets, like Ahmadiyyas, all of them, they had alongside them Malay choirs, or they had Khadat groups, as they would call them.
Yes.
And these kept the communities alive, and also kept families connected to each other. So there was a certain degree of social cohesion as a result of these sporting clubs. So he was very much involved in this. And perhaps as a matter of interest, when Primroses eventually landed up at City Park, that was a predominantly Christian environment, of course many raised their eyebrows thinking, what's a Muslim club doing? Because Primroses did not only have Muslims, they had a few Christians also played for them. But the point which I want to make is that this home automatically opened up, and this was partly to do with Imam's understanding and foresight, and partly because when he and his family was pushed out of the Claremont home, which is not also far from here, basically shifted to where he was, where City Park was. He built a house opposite City Park, and in a sense he could watch the rugby from there. So it demonstrated two things. One, that his affiliation with that community, but also despite the fact that he had a house near the grounds, he would go to the grounds, and in that way people respected him. But also he had because he was Imam, he was referred to as Mfundisi because of his other work, that is, he was a sales rep for Wilson Roundtrees, and that opened up other avenues for him. And so he brought many communities together, people from different racial, ethnic backgrounds, in a sense, into contact with each other, and that, I think, he also contributed in making a difference.
Alhamdulillah. And we do know that there's also an inquest that is currently due to happen in October around the death of Imam Haron as well. Is there any light that you can shed on that?
Well, basically the inquest basically started way back in November, and then subsequently one day further sort of results came from that in March 2023. But the event taking place on October the 9th is essentially the judgment of the judge. In other words, his verdict based upon what expert witnesses gave at the November sort of hearings. Now, quickly is that we must recall that way back soon after he was killed in prison, there was an inquest that was basically forced on the government to basically have, and of course the government wanted to skirt around this, but they couldn't because of civil society voices. And as a result of that, they had an inquest, and the finding was that, well, he fell from a staircase. And so we never believed that. We always knew that he was killed. And the expert witnesses at this 2022-2023 sort of inquest demonstrated in very tangible ways, conspicuous ways, that he was killed. It could not have been as a result of having fallen or of a heart attack or any of that sort. So we're looking forward to the judge's verdict, and we are hopeful, like the Haffiji case, we will get positive results.
Inshallah. I think the entire community is hoping for a positive result as well, and we wish the foundation the very best during that period, because it's not easy going through this process every time the inquest comes around as well. We have a very important seminar that's happening this Thursday. That's happening right here at Islamia College in the auditorium. Would you like to tell our viewers a bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. I think as we all know, we have annual lectures and seminars that normally take place commemorating the Imam's life. The organization, apart from IHF, was the Imam Abdullah Haron Educational Trust that usually had that, but because of COVID and other circumstances, it could not carry on with some of its work. Having said that, IHF basically, that started out in 2018, decided to take up this responsibility to continue and trying to contribute and to educate people about the life of the Imam. And what's happening on Thursday is that we invited two important individuals. One is Farid Sayed. We all know he has been with Muslim News, which of course came to an end in '86, and then he and others started Muslim Views, and he has been intimately associated with the name of the Imam, of course with the newspaper, but with the name partly because the paper itself basically commemorated. So he'll be giving the keynote, and then in response to that keynote we've asked Zubaydah Jafar, who is an award-winning journalist, to do that on our behalf.
Inshallah. And what time does the seminar start, Prof?
This will start at 7, just immediately after Maghrib,
okay,
and end at about 9 o'clock.
Inshallah. Okay. And that's happening this Thursday, 28th of September.
Correct.
Right here at the auditorium as well.
That's correct.
Prof, Jazakallah so much for coming into studio and sharing wonderful story about Imam Haron. It's always lovely hearing such. And every time I interview someone about from the foundation or from various organizations, there's always a different story that one has to tell. It's just goes to show the life and times of Imam Haron. And Jazakallah to the foundation for keeping his memory alive as well.
Nashkurukum, and thank you very much.
All the best with the seminar on Thursday, and we encourage our, it's free of charge?
Yeah, of course,
can all come through.
Yeah, everybody's welcome.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah. And that's how we end Hilaal Live. We're back tomorrow just before, well, about 20 to 6, inshallah, till about 20 past 6 for the next couple of days. From the Cape Town studio, we now hand you over to the Johannesburg studio. Faraz Patel and the team, myself, Luqman Shadrack, and Sohail Barnes bids you a warm assalamu alaikum.